Hello and welcome to another episode of the Comically Podcast. Thank you for joining us for episode number 38. Today, Angela and I are going to be talking about the Rings of Power Season 1 on Amazon Prime Video. I think that's the whole name of that service. I don't know. It doesn't really matter. Amazon's plenty rich. They don't need us giving them more free advertisements, even though we are going to be talking about one of their TV shows today. But I think you're gonna, oh boy, this was a little bit of a tough episode for Angela and I, because Rings of Power, well, Lord of the Rings in general, I guess the three movies and the Hobbit trilogy. Yes, we kind of like the Hobbit trilogy, is something that's really important to us, just something we and our whole family has kind of bonded around, and is, yeah, it's like a family touchstone. Those movies are important to both of us. We don't really get into that too much on the episode, but that's some like necessary background. Angela and I both love Lord of the Rings, and you're going to hear us wrestle with a little, that's an understatement, a lot of disappointment in the fact that we did not really like this show that much. There's some good stuff in here. There's some interesting things. It's just maybe not what we wanted, right? So maybe it's a matter of expectations more than anything else, but we're going to, I think that's kind of where we're going to end up with most of our discussion, is like, what is it about it, right? Because there's so many of the pieces, and there's so many of the things that we should like here, that we should like the show. What about it doesn't sort of connect or do it for us? So this is an interesting episode. I think it's actually quite a good conversation, right? I think it's a good critical exercise for us. And like, we really wanted to like a thing, high expectations. It didn't quite meet them. Can we figure out an interesting way to talk about it, another that's not just saying, oh, it's bad or I didn't like it? And I think we do an okay job. I was happy with what I heard when I was listening back and going through the edit. Again, thank you for being here. Hope you enjoyed the episode, and you're going to hear our conversation right after this short break.
It was so boring, and I didn't like anybody.
Well, we'll get to that.
Especially the children.
The Harfoots.
I didn't like any of the minors.
Okay. Well, I guess maybe we can start there. Like, can you be more specific than it was like boring? Like, I get what you're saying, but like, because I think that first scene, right? The first scene with Galadriel and the elves, and they're sort of chasing down Sauron, and they're in like that wintry place, and you know, they go into his like castle thing, and it's very reminiscent of I think when they go into, is it Barad-dûr in the first movie, right? And they're like, it's this big empty place, right? And then, you know, eventually they alert the orcs and they like get chased out of there, right? But I don't know, for me it echoed that, and I was like, oh, these are kind of the vibes that I wanted, right? Like, this feels like Lord of the Rings, and then very little after that felt like Lord of the Rings to me. So like, where did it go? I mean, I don't even, you know, and I don't know if you liked that scene at all, but just like, where did it go wrong, I guess? Like, where do you feel like you just were out?
I felt like I didn't really care much for the Southland story.
Yeah.
I was just like, I thought it was interesting how it turns into that's how Mordor began or whatever. That was interesting.
That was
you
interesting.
You had to watch the whole thing, or it was like sort of, because it's like, oh, it's like a little history lesson, but it was a really long history lesson.
Mm-hmm.
But I didn't actually care for like any of the people from there. So
that kid sucks. Kid sucks so bad.
Yeah. That's what I hated, all the kids. Basically, everything that happened, kids' fault.
That kid is horrible.
Yeah. I was like, what was his deal? He's so annoying. What was his name? Theo?
You're talking about Theo, who is in this episode is going to be kind of all over the place, because this show is all over the place. There's, how many plot lines are there? There's the Harfoots, the elves. Galadriel, who split the elves. Galadriel splits off from the elves, so those are separate things. That's 3. There's Numenor. There's the dwarves. There's the Southlanders. There's at least 5 different plot lines going on at any one time.
And I didn't care about a single one.
The Southlanders plot line is the elves. At the beginning, the elves are sort of saying that Galadriel returns, and the elves, you know, despite protests from Galadriel saying that Sauron has been vanquished after all these times, they're going to pull out of Middle Earth and return to, I think it's Valinor, I think is where the elves are from, but they're going to return to the west. And so, you know, as they're doing this, one of the elves sort of on the edge of their space that they're, you know, monitoring is sort of finds some odd things. There's like the moment, do you remember the scene when he like squeezes the cow's udder and that black stuff comes out?
Yeah, that was really gross.
Yeah, that was super gross.
What if I was drinking milk at that time?
Yeah, that would not be good. That happened to someone. That had to happen to someone. That's upsetting. But so he's like, there's this stuff going on. He and this woman, I think Bronwyn, I think her name is Bronwyn, sort of go and discover that, oh, there's like orcs digging tunnels underneath all these parts of the Southlands. Like they're at work here and they're following this person named Adar. But Bronwyn's son, Theo, has discovered this relic of Sauron that, you know, he just found it under this old guy's barn, under the floor of this old guy's barn, but he's drawn to it, right? And I think this kind of gets into something that came up a lot for me, is I think that's supposed to be a sort of parallel, you know, it's not exactly the like Frodo thing, right? Where he has possession of this object of power, and like, how does he like resist or not resist its pull, or what does he want to do with it, right? And I think he's curious, right? I think initially he's curious, but they don't set him up. He never has an idea of like what to do with it, right? At one point he just like shows his friend, right? He kind of thinks it's cool, right? He never has an idea of what to do with it. He never has visions of like, oh, I'm going to go off and like kill a bunch of orcs or something, and it's going to make me a hero, right? Like the thing that made The Ring interesting is how, I mean, Frodo wasn't like apathetic, but how Frodo had this sort of love-hate relationship with it, but whenever he came into contact with someone else, right, what it did to him, what it did to like Boromir, what it did to Sam at the very end, right, what it did to Galadriel, right, what it did to Gandalf right at the beginning, right, when Gandalf, like, you know, the whole screen goes dark when he was like, you take it, right? And there is never that with this. It's like the hilt of the sword, right? And it's obviously evil. There's never that thing, right? It's just sort of bad object that the orcs want, right? And he's aware of it, but he's not willing to give it up. But there's no reason specifically. They never really give a reason, right? It's just, you know, the reason feels like plot more than anything else. And you know, I don't know. That's boring. I guess that's boring, right? Like,
that's so boring.
And I think, like, I don't know. Like, so one thing that you said that was really interesting is like you liked the history lesson of like, oh, this is how Mordor got formed. Did you like? There's kind of a lot of that in this show, right? They're talking about how the elves, the 3 elven rings get made, right? The show is ultimately going to be about how the One Ring gets made. Like, were you into that stuff, or
sort of? I liked the little plot. Well, I guess we are spoiling it. I liked the little plot twist when the guy that looks like Aragorn ended up being Sauron. I thought that was pretty cool. That would have been cool to actually watch and like actually be sitting there and being like, oh, but I was not about to sit through all that just to get to that one part. But I thought that was cool. Also, I feel like a lot of the time I was pausing it to Google up all of these fucking names. Like I had to remind myself who Isildur ended up being, because like I remember the name. And I was looking up what the name of, like I was looking up like Aragorn's whole family tree, because I was like, wait, huh? And like there was obviously, and I guess that shouldn't be because there was no like Hellborn in the family tree or whatever. Mm-hmm. And I was just like so confused and looking up. So I was like, I don't know. I feel like if you're like an actual Lord of the Rings, like hardcore fan, that would have been cool. But for me, I was expecting to be more informed about it than I was. And so then it wasn't fun.
So you were expecting to know, to get the references more than you did. That's what you're saying? Okay. And like, do you think that's really it? Like, do you think if you had gotten them all like immediately, that you would have been more in on it?
I think that if I gotten the references more easily, I would have been able to excuse the parts of it that I didn't like as much. But I was confused, and also it wasn't interesting.
Yeah. And like, I mean, it's interesting, right? So a lot of people have said that, right? That they're very much doing the like Halbrand is your Aragon or your Aragorn, right?
Yeah.
Like he's
Because he even looked like him a little.
yeah, he totally right. He's sort of this reluctant person who ends up, being super skilled at like smithing, and then you see some battle scenes with him, right? But like, and I like I've tried to think, right? Because we were excited. The trailer came out, during the last Super Bowl. We were excited about this, and just I don't know that first episode came out, and I watched like the first half of it when 2 months ago now, because this show wrapped up just a couple weeks ago, and just like wasn't super into it, and wasn't like reading a lot of stuff where people are like, you gotta watch this, like it gets better, or like this is I wasn't seeing that type of stuff, and so I wasn't really like, I don't know, I wasn't motivated to watch it. And then going back over the last week and watching the 8 episodes, like I've been trying to figure out why that is, because
it's Amazon. Have you ever watched a good thing from Amazon?
Have you seen The Boys?
No.
The Boys is pretty good. It's like a super violent, like what if superheroes were actually fascists kind of show.
I think that this type of show would have been better if Netflix made it, because it would be a more fantasy. Because like, I don't know, I feel like if Netflix made it, I would have expected it to be more kind of like Witcher or something.
Yeah.
But I just feel like, and I also wonder if Netflix were making it, if they were able to get different actors. I don't know.
That's kind of the thing I come back to, right? And just when we're making that Aragorn comparison, like the Halbrand character, he turns into Sauron, but his name is Charlie something. But right, I don't know if it's as simple as like having it's not who played Aragon. I'm forgetting his name. I want to say Hugo Weaving. It's not Hugo Weaving. Viggo Mortensen. That's right. Is it just as simple as like Viggo Mortensen's a really good actor and this guy's like an okay actor? Like I don't.
It felt like they were all even with like. So we were talking a little bit with Elrond, and I was talking a little bit with Galadriel. Like it was like I feel like they were relying a lot on looks, and it was just like, but it wasn't. I don't know. And I think I didn't really like Galadriel's a lot, because I know that Kate Blanchett Galadriel makes a lot of like weird faces and like looks all like weird a lot.
Yeah.
But then when this actress was doing it, I was like, this is weird.
Kate Blanchett's also in that movie for like 40. She's in the first movie for like 45 minutes, and then has like 1 or 2 scenes in the remaining movies. Like she's in it. She's in that first movie, and she's like a memorable part of it, right? Because she has a pretty significant scene with Frodo when he's looking into her mirror, and there's that sort of memorable thing when she goes like all like it turns
Scary.
she goes all scary. It like turns into a horror movie for a second when he's off, right? Again, when he's like offering the ring, right? But like she's not a huge part of that movie.
Yeah.
And yeah, like all the Galadriel stuff here is like so serious. It's so serious.
Yeah. I wish that they did one on like Aragorn or Legolas, or like, I don't know. I guess because it's not the same time period. But like, wasn't Aragorn like alive for a really long time?
Well, Aragorn they went like too far back, right? Because
why'd they go so far back?
Because Isildur is the heir of Aragon. Like he comes from the line of Isildur eventually. But there was the initial pitch for a Lord of the Rings show was right when the hobbits are in the Prancing Pony and they ask who's that guy over in the corner who we figure out is Aragorn. Someone says that he's a ranger from the north. And the initial pitch for a Lord of the Rings show was like, who are the rangers from the north? What's their thing?
Yeah, that would have been cool.
So you wouldn't have had to bring back Viggo Mortensen. He could like show up, but like what are they doing? And like that sounds interesting. Like if they were able to do that, like I was thinking about it, right? And the thing, if you think about that first movie, do you have when you think about the Lord of the Rings movies, like what is the thing that like you like about them? Like why are they like memorable? Why have you watched them so many times? Like if you had to sort of pin it to one thing.
Because I feel like I like the like grandness of it, and like I like, because like I've like seen like the making of, so like I feel like I've understood like how much like work went into it, and like the big sprawling like landscapes and scenery and the super intricate sets and everything. And I was like, this is like Amazon Prime Studios. It's not the same as like sort of the scale of like the movies, which is like obviously like to be expected, but I think like that was a big part of it, because I think it just, the story just seemed much more like rich and much more like complicated or like elaborate, and this was just like eh.
I mean, they spent like $60 million an episode on this. Like,
Ooh.
they spent a ton of money, and I think it looks pretty good. I think it looks the best when they have a few of those like sweeping shots that are like, yo, we're back here. We're back in New Zealand. This is great.
Yeah.
There are some scenes I don't think Numenor looks particularly great.
Yeah, because that was supposed to be Gondor, right?
That's sort of like, Gondor is sort of like them trying to replicate what Numenor was. Right, in Middle Earth, the people who made Gondor are trying to like replicate the greatness and the grandeur of Numenor. But even like, I mean, we don't see a ton of Gondor, but even Gondor, right, is like, it's very stark, right, when we get to it, right?
Yeah.
Because it's sort of this great city brought low and controlled by someone who doesn't really care whether or not it survives, right? So you get the sense that it's fading in a lot of ways. Numenor just kind of felt like they were like, what if these people were like ancient Greeks or something?
Yeah.
I don't know if you got those vibes.
Weird. I didn't.
But
Yeah, because like I feel like I like how like a lot of the sets from like Lord of the Rings kind of seem like otherworldly, but like the Numenor was just like, that's just a castle.
yeah. So they spent the money. I think I forget what they call it. I think the dwarf, like the mountain that they live in, I think that looks pretty good. There's some like big shots, but most of those are like interiors of like of Durin's home. But I mean, I want to push back a little bit on your like thing about the sort of grandeur of the plot. Because if you think about like Lord of the Rings, right? If you think about that whole story, like there's a lot going on, but like it's not super complicated, right? It's like Frodo has to take a ring to Mount Doom, right? You have to take the ring to the specific place and throw it in. Like the story's pretty simple, right? There's all of these things, there's all of this stuff that intersects with it, right? In terms of like the people that he gets to help him and him getting split up from them, and the sort of the powers at work around him, you know, trying to prevent or help him accomplish this. But like the actual like mechanics of the thing that has to happen, right, is pretty straightforward. And I think that's kind of like, I guess I would kind of say that's its strength, right? Because you have like, okay, from the very beginning, right, when Gandalf tears it off and he's like, Frodo, you got to go do this, right? And Sam's there and he pulls Sam and he's like, you got to go with him, right? And it's just kind of, we're just kind of off, right? And then all this other stuff can happen. The simplicity of that central plot, I would say, lets everything, right? Lets all of that other complicated stuff come in. But, right, you understand what the goal is the whole time. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And I think here, it's like, I guess I never knew where we were going, right? I think we started with something interesting when Galadriel was like, I have to avenge my brother, right? That's like pretty straightforward. And that's where it starts. And then we see how she gets like thrown off of that, right? But then, then it cuts to like the Southlands and it's like, well, something weird's going on there. And then we cut to the Harfoots and it's like, well, there's a big guy in a space rock. What's going on there? And then we cut to Durin and it's like, well, they're mining mithril. Like, okay, we know what that stuff is. And it's like, I think specifically with the Galadriel stuff, it had an interesting idea, but there are so many plot lines and so much going on that I guess I never felt like I knew who to care about. Does that make sense to you? Did you agree with that or? Yeah,
because I feel like I wasn't attached to any particular storyline.
Because there's whole episodes where just like, oh, we don't see the Harfoots this episode, or oh, we don't see the Southlanders this episode, right? There's like, I don't know. I guess I never felt like I knew how much those plot lines mattered. And at the end, they don't all come together and intersect, right? The Numenor and the Southlands, when the elf one does, but I guess I never felt like I knew who to care about. And again, the thing that was so, I think, brilliant about that first movie is like they spend like an hour just in the Shire, right? Like that birthday scene is, you know, it's like a 3-hour movie, so they have the time. I think that birthday scene goes on for like 50 minutes. By the end of it, right, you understand who Gandalf is, you understand who Frodo is, you understand who Sam is, you understand who Merry and, like, you know, you have Merry and Pippin are already in there, and you're just like, you also understand the stakes of the thing, right? You understand, you know, because you see them like having fun, right? You see this, all the Shire, like what it can be when they all get together, right? Like it takes time to like have cool fireworks and to have Merry and Pippin saying get the big one, right? And like all this stuff that like kind of seems unimportant, but then as the story goes on, you understand what's at stake the whole time. When Frodo sees in Galadriel's thing the like vision of, oh, the Shire burning, right? You understand what is being lost, right? And I guess here I never really cared what the stakes were, right? Because I didn't like the Southlanders. It was like there were like 30 of them the whole time, and they kept talking about the Southlanders. Like, where are all the other people? Like, at least give me an idea that like there's lots of other people at stake, right? Because we just keep seeing the same, like, you know, there's like 10 main ones, and then there's like some people that float around there's like some, you know, people that float around in the background, and, you know, like I don't know, does that make sense to you? Or like I guess that's kind of the thing you were saying, right? Like who to care about, right? Yeah.
And I didn't care for any of them.
Well, you said you kind of liked a little bit of the history, like where Mordor came from, right?
Yeah, but not that much. Not as much as you keep bringing it up.
No, like, because that, I mean, did you get to the part where you saw the Balrog? Did you see that episode?
No.
I think it was at the end of episode 6, right? So do you remember in Lord of the Rings when Gandalf talks about where the Balrog came from?
Sort of.
So I think they're in that. I think it's Barad-dûr. I forget the names, but he's talking about how when they found the Mithril, they dug too deep and they awakened it. And so,
oh yeah, I remember reading about that in the Wikipedia.
Yeah, I think it's at the end of episode 6. You literally see, because Durin and his dad have a big fight because Durin wants to keep digging because they need the Mithril to save the tree that means the elves can stay in Middle Earth. Although, like, I don't know I don't really care about the elves are. We can talk about the elves in a second. But so he wants to keep digging. His dad says no because some people have almost died. It's like really dangerous. But then he goes ahead anyways. And then at the end of episode 6, you sort of like, it goes down the like the shaft or the vein that they were digging, and you see the like Balrog light up at like the roots of the mountain. And it's like, okay, cool. Like, I don't, you know, do you ever get bothered when TV shows do that thing where they like over explain something?
Yeah. I
don't know. The Balrog thing for me, it was like, like Gandalf told us where it came from. I don't know if I needed to like see it, you know, because there was that. I don't know. I thought the Mordor thing was a little bit like, and I don't know. I was like, oh, okay, that's where Mordor came from. I guess that's kind of interesting.
It would have been more interesting if I cared more about the people who lived there before.
Yeah, right. I think if it was like, oh, what was lost to create Mordor, but you don't have a good sense of that, right? Because it's like, they keep talking about this huge expansive space, right? They like the Southlands, and they show you this big space on the map, and then it's just like it's a few people, right? It's like 15 or 20 people, and it's like, well, you know, it's okay if they move. You can move like 15 or 20 people so that the orcs can live somewhere. Like, that's okay. That kind of frustrated me a little bit. Was there any character you kind of liked at all? Was there anyone you were?
I liked the dwarf.
Durin?
No, his wife. I liked his wife.
Oh, okay. Okay. That's what I was saying. Those are like the only two people I really cared about. What about them? Or like what felt different about them compared to everyone else that we felt was kind of boring?
They made me giggle.
I did like the way she sort of like yells at him and gets on his case. But even the thing about like, I mean, they're the only ones who are like having fun. Again, we talked about this is a super serious show. I think they're the only comic relief like at any point in anything. And Lord of the Rings was kind of full of that stuff, right? Like Merry and Pippin are like, they're hilarious.
Yeah.
Like even in like super serious moments, right? Like I was just thinking like there's like the really sad scene when they're splitting up after, I forget when I think they split up after Isengard, right? And they go two separate ways, and he like gives him the last of the like the pipe weed, and he's like, it's not supposed to be funny, but he's like, I know it's all gone because you smoked too much, Pip. And it's like, it's kind of funny, right? That like it's not supposed to be, and it's sad because they're like leaving, but it's kind of funny. Or when they're on the Weathertop and the wraiths are going to show up like majorly for the first time, right? The reason that they show up is because Merry and Pippin are arguing about like how to cook the tomatoes. Like it's ridiculous and like nonsensical, even in these like super serious moments. And like there was like very little of that here. I think the Harfoots are like an obvious stand-in for the Hobbits, but like they go in and out of the story so much, and I think they're not like they're like that. They're very serious, right? The one guy, he is all about like like staying on track, or you don't get lost, so you don't get lost or whatever, right? I forget what their saying is. Yeah, Durin and his wife are the only one who feel like they're having any fun. And I think even the idea that like, right, Durin is mad at Elrond, right? Not for some like important reason, but he's like, hey, you haven't been around here for 20 years and you missed my wedding. Like it's not complicated, right? And it's like, that it's something, it's totally relatable. And there's kind of an interesting idea here, and it comes up like a few times. They don't like go into it a lot, right? But the fact that the elves do live for such a long time, right? They like perceive things on such a different time scale from dwarfs or humans or any other creature, because they live for so long, right? That there's the one point when I think it's in the first episode, those elves walking into the tavern, and the guy gets really mad at him, and it's the guy that turns out to be like the shitty person who had the sword, so you kind of understand why he's like that. But he's like, he says something about because the Southlanders allied with Morgoth in the first time that they fought the elves, right? And he's like, that was hundreds of years ago, and he's like, to me that was yesterday, right? And so the idea that the elves sort of have a different feeling or understanding, or just a different, like, if they're just more apathetic toward everything that goes on because they understand, because they understand like the long arcs of history that when you live for like 80 years you can't really, right? And they do that a little bit, right? They're getting at that with like Durin and Elrond's relationship, but they don't go into it too much, right? There's a few comments towards it about how they perceive and feel differently because of that, but like it's not a central like theme or anything, right? Their longevity, how does their longevity affect their relationship with the place that they live? I don't know, that's something that would be interesting for them to like get into in maybe, because there's going to be 5 seasons of this. This is season 1, and they have like a 5-season story that they want to tell of this. Yeah.
What? That's like locked in?
That's locked in, yeah.
But like, I feel like it wasn't even that popular. Why would they want to? I
mean, part of it is because they're Amazon and they have a lot of money, and
so then donate it.
Because did they pay like $500 million just for the rights to make the show? I think like they paid too much money just to be able to make it, that they can't just like cancel it after a season. Yeah, so they have a 5-episode arc locked in, and we can talk about that a little bit at the end. I want to maybe, I think we've touched on a lot of this here. I want to talk a little bit about Galadriel specifically. She's super serious, right? She's not totally like fun to watch. This what did you think about, like, and I know you watched those 4 or 5 and then you read the rest, but like, what do you think about about this idea that her like relentless pursuit of eliminating evil, and how that kind of brings her, because ultimately she's kind of the one who brings Sauron into like into contact with the elves and into contact with the guy who's going to end up making the rings, right? In a way that like her relentless pursuit of that kind of facilitates the thing that she was trying to avoid. Like, do you think were you like picking up on that all, or do you think that's interesting to see that? Or
what was it? Her wanting to get rid of evil?
Yeah, because right, she has this scene at the beginning with her brother. Then it's like, my brother died, so I'm going to like eliminate Sauron if it's the last thing I do. But then she kind of ends up she brings him into like the Elven city, right? And he's there kind of right before the Elven rings are forged. Like, I don't know. Do you think that's like interesting? Was that something that you like kind of seen that side of her at all, or her backstory a little bit?
Kind of. I still didn't. I feel like it was a little bit. I don't know, because I feel like her whole thing was that she just like wanted to destroy all like whatever bad, right? And I feel like that's kind of, it's like, wouldn't anybody? I don't know.
But she has like a very personal reason, right? And that's why she can't sort of give it up, because she says to Elrond at one point, like, if I do, then who am I going to be, right? Because I've been doing this for my whole life. And I think the thing that they're trying to get at there is ultimately that pursuit sort of brings her very close to the evil that she's trying to destroy, right? It brings her very close to Sauron, right? Eventually she figures out that's who it is. And it kind of blinded her from being able to see that that's what he was, right? He was lying to her that whole time, right? And but then, there's this final scene where he's trying to like convince her that like he never lied to her, and she kind of knew what he was, right? She actually kind of knew what he was, but she ignored it because he was like enticing, right? He was enticing to her, and he was access to the sort of power that she wanted to use, right? Kind of in the same way as the same way the ring, the idea of power, when you're talking about the One Ring, is abstract. He was kind of access to the type of power that she was like, oh, I could use this to destroy evil, right? To eliminate Sauron. But it blinds her to the fact that he actually is Sauron. And I don't know, like, I think that's kind of interesting because if you think about who she is in the movies, then, right, she's not a fallen character, she's bright, but she's definitely sort of removed.
She's kind of like a passive character.
Yeah, right. She's removed herself from the world, right? She's living in this forest and no one gets to go in or out of the forest. She doesn't leave, right? She's kind of separated herself from the rest of the world. And I think it's kind of interesting to think about, like, oh, that happened because she had sort of this failing before, right? She got so close to something and kind of was unable to recognize. She got so close to that evil that she was unable to recognize it for what it was, that she, maybe feels like it's some sort of moral failing. And so she kind of recedes from the world in a certain sense, right? Until Frodo shows up. I don't know. I guess I think that's kind of interesting to be like, oh, that's how, that's why she is the way she is in the movies, but like it's different. And I think this is the thing we've kind of come back to, right? That's an interesting idea, kind of, right? How did this powerful character fall and feel like they had to retreat from the world, right? What was that thing that happened to him? What did that look like? But like, that also has to be interesting to like watch on TV, and it's not super, just because I don't know the character or the actor that was playing Galadriel. Not a bad actor, but just like, I don't know, very serious and just not super interesting all the time. I don't have like a better way to say it.
Yeah.
But I don't know. Do you, like, if we're thinking about like, that's what this show is doing, they're trying to explain things that we're going to end up seeing in the movies. Does that give you like, oh, maybe does that give you like a little bit of hope or like interest in seeing season 2? Like, are there certain things that you would want them to explain? Do you just want to know like more about Middle Earth in general? Or like, if that's what they're doing, then like, are you like potentially further out on future seasons?
I think if I liked Galadriel, I would have liked knowing her background more. Yeah. But even like when I first found out it was going to be mostly like Galadriel, the one kind of person from the movies that it was going to focus on, I was like, oh, because I didn't really care.
Mm-hmm.
you know?
Mhm.
So I think maybe if it was like someone I cared about more, or even like, yeah, someone I cared about more.
What if we get more? We're gonna like Isildur is not dead. I don't know if your recaps mention anything. You don't see him at all in episode 8 because he's in sort of an accident. We know from Lord of the Rings that he can't die in that accident, but they don't show him. There was an accident in episode 7. You don't see him in episode 8, so his fate is very much up in the air. We know that he doesn't die because, we've seen Lord of the Rings.
He's in Fellowship.
Yeah, but like, I don't know, does that sort of stuff, right? Knowing that he's going to sort of be involved with Aragorn's plotline, I think it's sort of up in the air who the wizard is, the big guy is. People say it's Gandalf. It might be Saruman. It might be a different wizard. I
hope it's not Saruman.
Why not Saruman?
He's the bad guy.
Well, he turned.
I don't
he
care
was
about the
good
bad
before
guy.
that. He was good for a while.
All I know about Saruman, my only memory of Saruman is seeing him impaled by that wheel, so I don't really care about him. What's a Istari?
Istar. So each of the wizards, there's the wizards in Tolkien's like expanded understanding of Middle Earth. They're kind of like forces of nature. They're not really people as much as they're like forces of nature, right? They like exist to sort of balance certain things in the world. You kind of get that, right? You get that when Saruman becomes corrupted and then Gandalf has to become a white wizard instead of a gray wizard, right? To sort of balance out the evil that he had sort of become or started to embody. I think you kind of get that a little bit in The Hobbit with Radagast, right? He's sort of the person who watches over nature. So what if
he's Radagast?
Could be Radagast. It's probably not Radagast, but
I hope it's not someone that we have never heard of either.
So you want it to be Gandalf?
I guess, but like I don't like seeing Gandalf like that.
That's the thing, right? Like I don't really. It's way more interesting if Gandalf is just this sort of, right? The way that he is at the beginning of The Hobbit, where I forget how it goes in the books, and I think they use a really similar line in the movies, but Frodo or Bilbo just sort of talks about him. Oh, you were that like wizard that sort of took one of my relatives off for an adventure one time. I didn't know you, I think he says, I didn't know you were still in business, right? Like Gandalf is some sort of like traveling huckster that's like tricking people into adventures. Like, I don't need to know how Gandalf got his staff and like learned to do magic. Like,
yeah, because it's like I like Gandalf as like the little he's a little bit of a goofball, and I like that. I don't want to see him as some like weird naked guy who can't talk.
Yeah. Did you see any of the scenes with like the cultists, the people in white who were trying to track him down? No. That's a plot line that just there's like it might have been 5. It might have only been like 5, 6, 7. But there's these cultists who show up at the site where his meteor landed, and then they start tracking the Harfoots because the wizard is with the Harfoots, and they think that he is Sauron, and they're like here to sort of bring Sauron back into the world. But then he figures out that he's a wizard because the Harfoot tells him that he can decide to be good and kills all of them. And it's like, that part really pissed me off. That did not feel like Lord of the Rings. Like, just, they were just like these creepy looking people in like white robes. Just, I don't know. It really didn't feel like Lord of the, I don't know. I know like in Return of the King, you get like the guys on the elephants or whatever, but like, like other people from other parts of the world show up, but like, I don't know, they're kind of just there to get rocked by Legolas and Gimli, which is way more fun.
Yeah.
So yeah, we're potentially going to get Gandalf stuff. We're going to get more Durin, Mithril stuff. We might get some Balrog stuff.
I wouldn't mind more dwarf stuff.
I think more dwarf stuff would be good. Because I think Durin, I forget it exactly. I think Durin is the son of the grandfather or the great-grandfather of Thorin.
Yeah. I thought the name looked familiar. Just couldn't figure out who he was supposed to be.
Because I think Thorin is Thrain's son, and I think Durin is Thrain's father. So I think Durin is Thorin's grandfather. Grandfather or great-grandfather?
Let me look.
So we could get some Durin stuff. We'll get some Arkenstone stuff probably. That's like the heart of the mountain, which is pure mithril.
Is Durin Durin?
Yeah.
That's a really long let me see. So Thorin
Oakenshield.
Thorin, son of Thrain the First, then
Mhm.
third. Wait, so 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Okay, that's a while.
Oh, there's 10 people between Durin and Thorin?
Well, there's 9 people.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay. I thought it was closer than that.
So that's why they start so far back.
I mean, part of it is because Tolkien, there's a book called The Silmarillion, right? They talk about the Silmarils a few times in this thing, right? So there's like a lot of lore back this far. I don't know if Tolkien wrote a lot of stuff like set like, 100 years before The Hobbit. Like, I don't know if he wrote a lot of stuff.
He should have.
I'll make sure to tell him next time.
You tell him.
Are you interested at all? So we got the 3 elven rings at the end, right? Are you interested? We're going to get the 7 dwarven rings, and we're going to get the 9 rings of men, right? And those, they turn into the ring wraiths. Is that interesting? Does any of that sound interesting?
I guess, but I also thought this would be interesting too, and it wasn't, so I don't know.
Yeah. And like, I think one thing just for season 2 could be better. I think it definitely could be better. I think we might have a little bit more purpose, right? I think this season set up a lot for season 2, right? Like, okay, now we know who Sauron is. Now we know that the big guy's a wizard and not an evil person. And he's on a quest with one of the Harfoots, right? Now we know that the elves have sort of opened this possibility of creating these rings of power, right? And so how do the dwarfs react? How does Numenor react? So I think it sets up a lot of stuff. It puts a lot of like things into play, and that season 2 can potentially have a lot more like direction, right? Like something that really bothered me in this was like the way it cut between all the different storylines. Like it just, like, I think we've said it a bunch, right? It's hard to figure out who to like care about when various characters disappear for a whole episode and come back, and you're just, I think it didn't quite know how to prioritize a storyline or keep them. There was too much to keep up in the air that I think it ended up affecting all of them negatively, because you were wondering kind of who to care about. And I think season 2 potentially has like a lot more focus, which could be really good. But I think, again, with that focus is like, it's kind of interested in explaining, and this doesn't necessarily have to be bad, but it's interested in like explaining where a lot of the stuff that we see in the Lord of the Rings comes from, right? And that could be good, but like it makes me nervous, right? Because some of that stuff, I think you said it really well. Like, I don't want to know, like, I don't care who Gandalf was before he shows up in the Lord of the Rings or the Hobbit. It's kind of way more interesting if he's just this wandering person, that he's just sort of a wandering, person that people are like wary of, because I don't know, he's like a big gray man in a dirty cloak. Like that's like kind of more interesting than knowing like, oh, this is how he got all of his magic and his staff and stuff. So, and like, I'm really hesitant about that. But any last thoughts about anything?
No, I want to talk about one shot.
Okay. Oh, I just have this last thing. My last note in here is when like Elrond was like snooping on Durin with his like super elf hearing. Do you remember that scene? That really annoyed me.
Why?
Because I don't know.
Would you not snoop on someone if you had elf hearing?
Wouldn't everyone just whisper all the time then? If you know that there was an elf around, wouldn't you whisper all the time?
Maybe he didn't know that he was around.
But they knew he was like in the vicinity, right?
But maybe they forgot. It's been 20 years.
I don't know. I feel like that is
you just
like,
thought it was too easy?
It's so easy, right? It's like, I was literally thinking, because they show them the two talking on a bridge, and then they zoom back, and I was like, oh, they're just sort of showing the scope of this thing. And I was like, if they show like Elrond's listening to them, like that's going to suck. And then they literally show that. Like, I think about like the scene when they're going up the mountain and everyone's like struggling through the snow.
Legolas, what do your elf ears hear?
Yes. But it's like, it's not like he has superpowers, right? He's just better at everything than everyone else, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know. That annoyed me.
Are you just jealous that you don't have super hearing?
I mean, partly.
It kind of just sounds like you're jealous.
I want to be able to walk on the snow. That's awesome. He's like, he's not like making fun of them or like prancing around. He can do that because he's an elf. I don't. I feel like that was. I can't explain exactly why that annoyed me so much, but that scene really annoyed me.
Thank you for sharing.
Okay, we're gonna go to our one shots. We'll be back after this short break. All right, and we are back with our one shots. Angela, why don't you start us off today?
Black Panther 2.
Oh, nice.
Go see it so I can talk about it.
It was good? You were into it?
Yeah, I want to talk about it with you, but I can't because you're not on top of it.
All right, so I guess I don't want you to say too much then, but I've heard like mixed things. Like, where are you kind of like, are you pretty positive, meh? Like, can I get some like general?
It's obviously not as good as Black Panther 1, or like I didn't like it as much as Black Panther 1.
Okay.
Obviously. I thought it was interesting. There was this one song from there that I really liked a lot, and the scene that the song plays in I really liked a lot.
Is it a Rihanna song?
No.
Did you have any thoughts about the Rihanna songs?
I have some thoughts about the after credits scene.
Okay.
If you had seen it,
okay.
You're so lame. You should have seen it before we recorded. Like, what's the point? This is so dumb.
No. It can be an episode.
Excited to talk about it, and now we can't.
It can be an episode. I didn't get to. We can do an episode.
Me and Kira are making a list of our favorite Marvel movies, our top 10, but we're not doing it by name. We're doing it by like
by vibes. Are you doing?
Like arrogant neurosurgeon becomes woke.
Oh, got it. That's
Gen Z kid gets a magic bracelet. So do you want me to read you some of the funny ones?
Yeah, let me
see if you can guess. Teenager breaks the multiverse because he didn't call the college admissions office when he got rejected.
That's the most recent Spider-Man one, right?
Yes.
That's in your top 10?
That's Kira's top. Oh, it isn't. No.
Oh.
Yeah, it is. But mine was that one Spider-Man meme where there's 3 of them.
Oh, okay.
I think Kira's are funnier, so I'm gonna read that one. Oh, Iron Man and Captain America are beefing and make everyone pick sides.
Civil War. Huh?
Yeah. Large blonde god man lands in Kansas or something.
It's the first Thor movie.
Right.
Yeah.
And then the one where everyone gets to hang out and kill the purple guy who's literally so fucking annoying.
Is that Infinity War or Endgame?
I think the one where he snaps his fingers.
And I forget. I'm not sure which one. The first one's better than the second one, though. You're right. He snaps it in the first one, which is the better movie.
Yeah, I think it's that one. Because I think she would have said something about Iron Man dying. I said Iron Man dying. Yeah, so I'm just trying to figure out how because I put Black Panther in my top 10, but I want to tell you it, but I don't know if it would give too much away.
Yeah, no, don't tell me it.
Ugh,
okay, so Black
lame.
Panther 2 is good, though. World of Black Panther, World of Wakanda.
Wakanda forever. What the heck? Did you see that? I really like the trailer.
There was the first trailer or a more recent one?
The first one. I saw that. I have seen the trailer so many times because I'm an AMC A-list member. So I see it every single time I go see a movie. So I see it so often.
All right. Mine, I was going to do a game, but I'm going to do a movie. Have you seen the movie Popstar, Never Stop, Never Stopping?
No, it sounds girly.
No, it's like it's a movie. Do you know who Andy Samberg is?
Yeah.
He's got curly hair.
Was that Brooklyn Nine-Nine?
Yeah. Yep. The main guy from Brooklyn Nine-Nine. He made a movie with his friends about being like kind of like an NSYNC or a Backstreet Boys type group. And it's actually kind of funny because Justin Timberlake is in the movie as his personal chef. I forget what group Justin Timberlake was in. If it was it Backstreet Boys or was it NSYNC? I'm not sure. But he's in the movie, so they kind of play with that a little bit, but it's like a group that breaks up and then he tries to have a solo career, but he's really bad and it's all going wrong, and then he has to like get the group back together, and it is hilarious. There's a lot of like actors that they brought in for like just a scene to do like one funny thing. They wrote a bunch of songs. They wrote a bunch of like whole songs that he performs, like when he's, like doing the shows or whatever. And yeah, there's like a scene in a limo with like fans and signing autographs. Yeah, it is ridiculous and funny in like, it's very like, it's not like complicated humor. It's like, like there's just like some gross out humor. It's just like fun, enjoyable nonsense. And yeah, Andy Samberg's really funny, and there's a bunch of funny people around him. There's like his manager was in a band that was called Tony. And each of them were named Tony, but they spelled it all slightly differently. Yeah, just
this seems like something you'd like.
It's stupid, funny stuff like that. So yeah.
What's it on?
Did I watch it on? I think it's on HBO Max. I watched it on HBO Max. Yeah, very good. Popstar, never stopping. I'd heard about it because it came out a while ago. I had an idea in my head. It was like they were kind of making fun of Justin Bieber, but I don't think so. I think it's more like boy band groups, like your NSYNCs and your Backstreet Boys, and the Justin Timberlake thing where he's his personal chef and he has to cut his like carrots and his celery into like different shapes because he like won't eat. Like he needs like different shaped foods or he won't eat it is hilarious. Justin Timberlake's like he's kind of a little creep in this movie, but it's good. All right, so those are our one shots: Angela, Black Panther, Wakanda Forever, and me, Popstar, Never Stopping. That brings us to the end of our show for today. Thank you everyone for listening to another episode of the Comixly podcast. You can follow Angela on Goodreads by searching Angela Glowacki, or on Letterboxd by searching congli, that's CONGLI, or Twitter by searching @congli_was_taken, that's CONGLI was taken. You can follow me on Twitter by searching @Joey Glowacki. Please rate and review the show on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or your preferred podcast listening app. All reviews are greatly appreciated and help our show grow. You can also get in touch with us via email by sending your feedback or questions to podcast@comixly.com. Or you can listen and give a thumbs up to episodes of the show on the Comixly YouTube channel. You can find our channel by searching Comixly on YouTube or following the link in the show notes. There you can also find past streams from our Twitch channel along with other great videos. The music you heard in this episode is the song Don't Ever Forget by Mecha Imperfect. You can find their music on Bandcamp and YouTube. Thank you everyone for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.